Hopefully you caught part one, because now we're going to talk about MLB contest selection on DraftKings and FanDuel. It's part two of this advanced fantasy baseball series, and we're starting right now. What's up, guys? Joe Holka here. Welcome to another daily fantasy sports and betting video. If this is your first time here and you want to become a profitable DraftKings player and get better at betting, start now by subscribing to the channel. Make sure you click that notification bell so you don't miss anything along the way. If you're already a Holkamaniac, you know what to do. Smash that like button and we'll get started. If you've been following any of my work during the NFL season, you'll know that I play the 1500 every single week on DraftKings, but more or less I'm attacking single entry, some of these smaller field sizes. So I wanted to get a little bit better idea of how viable playing single entry or some of those smaller contests was for MLB. We had a question in the chat about just playing one lineup per slate. Is this a pretty tough sport to do that with, in your opinion, even if it's on the GPP side of things as well?
I think it's a tough sport mentally to do that, because there's so much failure in MLB that there's going to be so many nights where you're watching your teams and you're sweating your teams and you're like your individual 8 hitters or whatever it is, you watch them go up to bat and most of the time they're not getting you any points. And so if you're invested emotionally in one lineup every single night, even if you have good results over the long term, it can be a really frustrating experience with MLB. And so I think a lot of people enjoy mass multi-entering MLB a little bit more because they feel like when things are happening, they can then look to see which teams are benefiting instead of like honing in on one specific player that they're kind of heavily invested in. So I think it's a little bit of a challenge mentally to just watch your team fail so often. Sure. And then at the end of the night, you're like, oh yeah, I did well, or I didn't do well.
If you're playing like a single entry type GPP, are you trying to jam in a stack for something like that where it's still a little bit more top heavy than a cash game, obviously?
No.
Okay.
I don't go out of my way to stack.
Okay.
It's kind of like what Derek said, a little more leaning towards stacks in tournaments where once you get to close to a tiebreaker situation, I'd rather add on to a stack than just play some random guy. Sure. But especially if you're doing one lineup, you still want the best plays you can get in there. If they happen to be on the same team, that is great. I think the time to stack is when you start spreading out more from there. You make that first base lineup, and then maybe your second lineup, you take a couple guys out and add into your stack. But if you're just doing one lineup, I think you just build your best lineup. If it ends up being a stack, great, but I wouldn't force it.
Drew, what are your thoughts on that? Are you kind of just trying to jam in as many of these kind of 1, 2, 3 hitters as you can on single entry type teams, or are you kind of on the other side of the fence with the stacking and kind of single entry tournaments?
Yeah, I'm with the other guys here. If it happens organically, yes, but that's not something I'm looking to force, especially if it's a single entry where just looking at kind of the exposures of those contests typically anyway. A lot of the guys, especially the high dollar single entry GPPs, guys are just throwing their cash lineups in there anyway. So you don't really have to be that much different or that contrarian to where you're almost getting uncomfortable, where you're kind of forcing things. So like Dave said, it's definitely just play your best lineup, especially in a single entry situation like that.
By the way, guys, if you've ever found any value in any of my videos or live streams, one of the best ways you can support what I'm doing here for free is to throw me the follow over on Twitter. And if you're new to the community, I also do a ton of content over on Instagram that never makes it to YouTube, never makes it to Twitter. So if you take a few seconds just to follow me over there, I'd really appreciate it. I'm always curious about what some of the best players are doing in game selection. So that's the next part of this conversation. Really wanted to dive in to see if this is more of an MME sport or if we could really be leveraging single entry like we talked about before. I want to get a feel for what kind of game selection strategy you have in general. Like, a lot of people know you from your live finals, chasing qualifiers and stuff like that. Obviously the topic is MLB today, but really across all sports. Like, are you a guy that is rolling out MME 150 lineups? Like, are you kind of in those mid stakes, like the 300 level, like rolling out like 5 to 10 lineups, hand building 3 max cash games? Let's hear about that before we even get going.
I do a little bit of everything, and it's different every day. Sometimes there's a slate that I feel is specifically tailored for a certain kind of game selection, whether it be cash games or MME, or sometimes even 3-mans. 3-mans are the new things that I'm getting into in NBA. I've done that with mixed results, I would say, this NBA season. But like high stakes, like $5,300 3-mans, if you can game select the right way and choose your opponents, make sure you know who you're going up against and you know the types of lineups they play. I think there's a big edge in being able to build a lineup that's a little bit different if you think there's going to be overlap between two opponents, right? So I'll sometimes look for two cash game chalky players in the 3-mans and try to essentially play a head-to-head against two guys.
Yeah, so if obviously you're kind of new to the channel, I do basically primarily NFL and NHL, but I also attack like a lot of niche stuff kind of within NHL. So I play a lot of NHL Showdown, and what you're talking about with 3-mans, I've had probably my best ROI in 3-mans, and I think it's for the same reason. Like a lot of people have a really similar approach in NHL Showdown, just everyone's playing two goalies. So like I'm kind of the opposite of that. I don't really play goalies at all. I kind of just correlate and go for a little bit more upside. But man, the 3-mans, like I think it's such an interesting game format.
What I've found, the past few years, if you look at where the ownership percentages go in different types of tournaments, in certain single entry tournaments or 3 max entry tournaments, the ownership percentages will be wildly different than what they are in tournaments with 150 max. And there's certain days I just want to play the obvious right plays, like whoever's going to come out on top of, Nolan Arenado at home and he's too cheap, but like, okay, so this is the right play today. If you're not willing to fade Nolan Arenado anywhere, then you probably shouldn't play every kind of tournament.
Sure.
There are the places you should be playing him, and there are the places you should be fading him. So that's why I play different types of tournaments so I can have my exposure to the correct plays in my cash lineups and a certain subset of tournament teams, and then this lower percentage weird. I think the Padres against Madison Bumgarner, so that's not even under the radar. Madison Bumgarner stinks, but you know what I mean. Then you can say, I can take my shot on that in this tournament and figure out, the ideal place to do that. So any day when I look at the slate and what I want to play, there's certain tournaments where I'm supposed to be playing that and certain tournaments where I'm not. But don't just random scattershot all of them here and there. Like wake up one day and be like, I'm going to stack 150 times in the tournament, and then the next day be like, I'm playing all cash games today, and that's what a lot of people do. Like, let me just try this and this. Yeah. Like, you've got to figure out what your strength is. It may take you a while to figure that out if you don't know, and play to that and play consistently. And if you're new to baseball and like trying to figure it out, definitely get the bat. And even if you want to do your own research and figure it out, have something to compare it against. Like, it takes a while to figure everything out. So don't be afraid to use great information that's already there.
I think the consistency aspect that you touched on is so big. I talk about this with my coaching clients like all the time, that like you're never going to know your expectation unless you have a decent idea of what you've been doing in the past. Like if you want to kind of experiment at the lower dollar level and then move up into what you think your edge is or what you think you're good at, but then be consistent with your approach. Like for NFL, like this past year, I told myself that I was going to play the 1500 and I was going to play it every single week. And I don't care about the ups and downs over the course of an 18-week season. I wanted to see if I could be profitable in that tournament. So that was kind of, I think that having a plan is something that people probably still don't talk about enough. Before we get back at it, if you like my work and you want to support my work, the #1 way you can do so for free is by bookmarking my Amazon link. A lot of people find it a little bit easier to remember for their day-to-day shopping if they actually bookmark it, because what you buy literally doesn't matter at all. As long as you're clicking that link to go to Amazon, you're doing your part to support the channel. So if you decide to join the Amazon crew, let me know in the comments. I'll definitely give you a shout out in the next video. But one of the things I noticed kind of even a ways back, you kind of attack some of these mid-stakes games as well, like kind of like whatever it is on DraftKings, like the monster 300 level. Are you building, like, are you max entering something like this that's like an 18 max? Are you building like kind of like 5 to 10 lineups, or is it all, I guess, kind of slate specific for that sort of game selection?
It's slate specific. A lot of times I'll have a real strong focus on entering, say, a qualifier where the max is 18 entries, and then I'll enter those 18 entries into the bigger field maxes too. So like 150 max, I'll still enter those same 18 lineups and then not build any other ones. So my actual focus is around the max entries in a specific contest, but I'll enter those entries into other things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Bales has talked about this before too. It's almost like stacking your entries, so it raises your ceiling overall. Like, great, if you beat the field size of 600 people, that's awesome. But what happens if you have the field size that would have finished really high in something with like 23,000 people? Like, you're limiting your upside if you don't stack your contests in that way, for sure. So I'm with you there. I know you have a ton of people that are grinding like the mini max in your channel for NBA. Do you see these guys that have a big hit in the mini max, wish that they were in whatever the $10 something like that, but obviously their bankroll probably can't handle that at that point, and maybe they're just trying to improve? Like, how do you get over the FOMO of not having that lineup in the biggest contest? I guess
it's not. Yeah, I've had that question a couple of times. It's I always say play the lowest stakes you can, always. Max the lowest stakes until you're kicked out of it, and then kind of move up when you're forced to, which no one should be even close if you're playing the mini-max.
Yeah.
And then they see, well, the caching score in the mini-max was actually a little bit higher than the 15 or the whatever. The top score was actually higher than it was in the whatever. So I actually think the mini-max is harder then, and that's not the way you look at it at all, because payout structure is not the same, the amount of people is not the same, the rake is not the same, double or whatever min cash is not the same. There are a lot of factors that play into how soft or how difficult a tournament is, and I wish I could just say go play the 15 with the same lineups you played the mini-max with for a whole week, and then you tell me where you have a better ROI, and it's almost always going to be the mini-max. It's not as easy as just, the caching score and the highest score is higher. All right, so the mini-max sucks. It's not like that. There's so many other factors. It's funny because I speak to a couple friends of mine that also have been doing this for a living, and they say the same thing. It's very hard for the average person to see that, but it's so evident if you were just to track your results over time from both tournaments. If you play both, it's actually, it's pretty significant how much better the lower stakes, or how soft the lower stakes are compared to higher stakes. So don't feel bad. If I were to give advice, don't look at the top tournaments when you do that.
That's what I was just going to say. Like, I think the biggest thing is if that's going to bother you, just don't even open the other tournament up. Like,
also this.
Ignorance is bliss.
Also this, how often are you going to get the highest score? Stop looking at the highest score. You're almost never going to get that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like you were close to winning a tournament every single day that it's going to hurt you in the long run not playing the 15. Don't be so
especially if like you're, like we talk about, like you're trying to learn, you're trying to get better at building lineups. So like $75 max enter the mini max, try and improve over the season. And if you think you're ready to move up in stakes, be my guest. But yeah, don't open the big tournament, I think, is a big part of it. But I don't know. I've got some FOMO with that, so I'm working on it. Just a reminder, if you're looking to invest in yourself and take your game to the next level, I do offer one-on-one coaching. If you want a little bit more information on that, you can find that at joeholka.com/coaching. But if you prefer to learn in more of a group setting, a lot of people still don't realize if they have an Amazon Prime account, which a lot of people do. They automatically have access to a free Twitch Prime subscription, so you get access to our premium Discord chat, a bunch of other perks, and you're really doing yourself a disservice, guys, if you're not taking advantage of these live streams. So make sure you're following me at twitch.tv/joeholka so you don't miss anything. All right, a lot of people have been asking about cash game strategy for MLB on DraftKings and FanDuel. Definitely a pretty hot topic that we had to dive into, but definitely a polarizing one as well. A lot of people don't think you can play cash games for MLB, so I was excited to talk with these guys about that. As more of kind of a cash game player, are you prioritizing kind of getting up to some of these stud pitchers, especially on DraftKings where you have the ability to play two different ones? I would assume most of the time you're paying up for your first one in cash games.
Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. I approach cash games a lot different than your traditional cash game player does, where most cash game players are like, you need floor and safety and you want your high owned guys. And I'm not really about that very much.
Sweet.
A lot of times it kind of
Let's hear the new
coincides.
perspective.
What's that?
I said, let's hear the new perspective then. I like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of times the top guys are the guys who are going to be high owned. They are going to be your ace pitcher. But there are plenty of times where it's not. For me, it is 100% about value. I don't care if it's a terrible pitcher. If he's in the right matchup for the right price, I will play him in cash games. I played Jason Vargas probably 4 or 5 times in cash games last year, and Jason Vargas is one of the worst pitchers in baseball. But in the right matchup at the right price, you can play him, and he's great. Yes, on a daily basis, like there's a lot of variance in baseball, but over 180 days, that variance tends to even out. And it evens out in favor of the players who are making the better plays. Whether they're risky plays or not risky plays, it doesn't matter. It's going to even out, and the best plays are going to create the biggest profit for the most part. And so for me, it's all about that value. And so I'm not scared to play these crappier pitchers in good matchups if that's what the slate dictates.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Cardi said, especially with cash games, I do think the perspective has shifted a bit where we're not necessarily looking just for the safe chalk, Brett Gardner type players where, if they get you 6 to 9 points, we'll take it. I mean, with the edge getting smaller, we want guys that have a little bit of upside baked in. I mean, Brett Gardner, sure, he can go off for a home run and a stolen base any night, but it's a rare occurrence for him. So it's gotten to the point over the last couple of years, especially where, I'm looking at a guy like Tommy Pham or somebody in that range, who's a similar salary usually to somebody like Gardner, who has a lot more upside. So I do think the landscape has changed. That was a good point that Cardi made, and I do agree.
So how often do you find yourself still forcing in stacks if you're still trying to kind of place some of the best plays around some of this value that arises?
I mean, I never play stacks in cash games. I think it's a bad approach unless it happens organically. Sometimes it does. It's a short slate or it's a core slate and you want a bunch of cores because they're the right plays. But I never put a stack in just to have a stack. It's only if they are actually the best values.
I think cash games in general are getting tougher and you have to be more particular about the games that you're selecting. And so, for me, I've realized that at the levels that I'm trying to play, from a dollar basis, my returns are still positive, but not enough for me to spend all the time and energy trying to hone down one specific lineup. A little bit easier to do in baseball than it is in NBA with dealing with all the news and whatnot. Yeah. But I think in general, it's a sport because there's so much variance and there's so much failure in the sport. It is a sport that's a little bit more fun to play.
If you want to learn more about how to become a profitable daily fantasy sports player and how to get better at betting, start now by hitting that subscribe icon in the bottom right-hand corner so you don't miss anything. Have a ton of DFS courses for other sports as well that are completely free on demand at YouTube, so make sure you check those out as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.